course, the arsonist came back and watched. And at one point, they knew some of the guys, so they said, "Hey, we're going over to the convenience store. You want a drink?" Type of thing. I mean, the balls of these guys.
Let's do this then, because people who don't know about these guys, let's do an overview of who these guys were, their backgrounds, motivation. Of course, you've already talked about. There were cuts that cost 600 plus firemen, so we get that. But let's describe. I think it was, again, pronunciation, Bobby Grabowski, or how do you pronounce his name?
Grabowski.
Grabowski, Donald Stackpole, Greg Bemis, Wayne Sanders. Are those the stars of this thing?
They were the primary four out of nine. And Bobby Grabowski was a full-time Boston police officer who always wanted to be a firefighter, but he got hired as a cop, and he was still trying to be a firefighter. And he was a fire buff. Again, each one of these guys were. Greg Bemis was the youngest member of the group. He was only 20 years old when they set their first, 22 years old by the time they set their first fire. And it was Greg who came up with the device that they used. It was Greg who was at 260 of the 264 fires. Nobody else had over 100.
It was Greg. He wasn't a fireman, or was he a fireman in another town?
Greg grew up wanting to be a fireman. He had his first radios by the time he was 8, 9 years old, listening to Boston. He had his first camera taking pictures out in Acton and Stowe, which is almost, say, 25 to 30 miles northwest of Boston. And as soon as he could drive, he started coming into Boston and watching fires and going to firehouses and making friends. Greg worked for Acton and Stowe as a call firefighter, volunteer. And then he became a dispatcher for the police and fire. And eventually, during this 2-year period, he got on the Boston Housing Authority as a police officer full-time, because his friend, Wayne Sanders, already was on the job, and he was a lieutenant in the Housing Authority, cops. And Donald Stackpole owned a security company, and he had a trailer right in South Boston that was sort of like a headquarters that he used for his businesses. And each of the other guys, of the 5 remaining guys, 4 of them were arsonists. One got in this conspiracy just because he joined trying to make Grabowski a fugitive someplace else. But the other guys were all involved in fire and police in one way or another. And it's a crazy group to have these civil servants doing this, setting 264 fires, Joe. Building.
I don't know why I'm smiling about this, because I think I'm smiling because it's so overwhelmingly hard to believe. So let's just kind of delve into these guys, because this is probably the time to do it. So you got Grabowski, who's a Boston cop, Stackpole and Bemis, who basically, Bemis gets onto the Boston Housing Authority cop. Wayne Sanders, Boston Housing Authority cop. Greg Bemis has Donald Stackpole has a security company, if we get that right. So these are people who you would think, and again, I'm being an amateur psychologist here, would want to do nothing to endanger firefighters and policemen, right? Wouldn't you think that? But you called him I don't know, misguided Robin Hood. Explain that, because this is it's almost psychopathic.
You're right. You get rogue members. There's been rogue members of police departments, who band together. These guys met each other. They didn't know each other until they were sparking in Boston. That's the term for fire buffing in Boston. And the groups used to meet at a Howard Johnson's parking lot near Boston Fire headquarters. And they met each other and they became friendly, as well as with dozens of others. However, when this started happening, you get the militant group, that's what they were, who went off the rails. But they felt that they were doing something good. They felt like the Boston Tea Party. Well, let's dump the tea in Boston Harbor back in the 1770s, and they're doing the same thing, except they're not only damaging, destroying building after building. We're talking about livelihoods for businesses. You're talking about over 200 firefighters eventually were injured. Now, when you get to October 2nd, or you get to June 3rd, you get 33 firefighters June 3rd and 22 firefighters October 2nd. In one fire, they get hurt. How do you justify continuing with this spree of setting fires? You know,
what's your view? Because and the more we talk about it, and when I read your book, which people need to read, I'll put a link in the site, you know, when they see this video, it'll be the link below the video. But I can't, you know, like I look, yeah, you're pissed off because of the cuts. I know what it's like. I was an airline pilot and layoffs, but to cross that boundary, start the fires, then see people getting injured and keeping the fires going because you want to change a policy. I can't rectify that with these people, in layman's terms, are out of their friggin' minds. I mean, so what's your view as an arson investigator? Am I way off here? Or these guys are just blatantly crazy and dangerous?
you know, if you go into profiling,
Yes.
it's hard to profile a crew like these guys. They have to be a little bit strange. Stackpole. Oh, I forgot Ray Norton. You gotta add Ray Norton to the list. He was a full-time Boston firefighter, and he was the fifth or sixth guy to be included in this crew. But
what did he do?
He never actually set one, but he knew where they were heading on certain nights, and he allowed his house to be used to make the device when they were going out. And he also pointed a place right across the street from his place in West Roxbury. He said, I hate that place. Why don't you burn that place? That type of thing. And
so he's an accessory, right?
Oh, yeah.
Obviously an accessory to a crime. And he still has his job, I'm assuming, right, at the time?
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Oh, he had lost it.
Yeah, he got 4 to 6 years. He got 4 to 6 years in prison, you know.
But no, I mean, at the time he was helping do this, was he still employed?
Oh, yeah, he was on the job. Yes, sir.
So he had no gripes other than the fact that he thought it was an injustice to somebody else, not himself.
He had a pink slip for a while, but he never got laid off. But still, he knew dozens who got laid off. But he was a very nasty person, different. He didn't have a lot of friends on the job. And Stackpole was the biggest a-hole in the whole group, you know. Very nasty. When guys get hurt, he says, oh, serves them right. They shouldn't have been on there anyway. They're a bunch of drunks. They shouldn't have been up there. You know,
and Stackpole, like what was his motivation? He was a security guy. He wasn't a fireman, wasn't a policeman. He wasn't a civil servant. So what motivated Donald Stackpole?
He was still a fire buff. And, you know, at once upon a time, he would like to have been a firefighter, but, you know, physically he was, you know, he was about 5'2" and about 4 feet wide. And he had a minor felony record too, so never finished high school. So he probably could never have gotten on the job, but he held that.
Well, there's motivation. There's a psychological profile that you could have a ball with, right?
Oh, yeah. So each one was a little bit different. Greg, his mother died of cancer when he was 16. And she used to take him to fires out in the Acton Stowe area because it was a thing to do out in the small towns. You know, a lot of people would show up at fires. And when she died, it hit him right in the heart. And he used to go visit her at her grave site. And when he was doing these fires, he would talk to her and set some fires at the graveside. Okay. So there's something deep there too.
Yeah, these
And
guys obviously are not normal. You know, for whatever, I understand the Robin Hood aspect and the Tea Party, you can say, okay, this is what they're trying. But then what they did and how they did it takes it into, okay, now we got to look at how crazy they are.
yeah,
Because if they had started like one fire or two fires in a place that you knew, or small rubbish fires, trash fires, you could say, okay, I get it. I get what they're trying to do, and it's not going to expand. And again, I'd like to hear your view. Okay, I get this. But when it's big fires like Spiro and the rest of them, then it's like, okay, this is insane, it's murderous, it's awful. So I can understand the other side, but not to the extent. So your view?
well, going right along with what you just said a minute ago, set small fires. They set 50 dumpsters on fire in the back bay. There's a back street is an alleyway behind the brownstones along the Charles River. And they took a little device and they tossed it in one dumpster after another. And they went across the Cambridge side of the Charles River and watched one light up after another. And fire companies on the radio, they're listening. These fire companies are coming from all over the place who don't even know their address, where they're heading or where they ended up putting these fires out. But those small fires didn't get the press.
Right.
So their motivation, again, they had to go to bigger stuff, and that's why they started buildings. But you know, Joe, it became nightly entertainment for them and for all the other buffs, and they liked that. When the press started giving him a name as Mr. Flare and the Friday Night Firebug, uh, I really blame the press for giving names to mobsters and everything else, because these guys eat that stuff up. And, you know, Greg loved being Mr. Flair. And then they started wanting to screw with investigators. And they knew we were out there doing surveillances, Boston police, fire, and ATF in the city. We were out, and there were no fires in the area for some reason. That's because maybe Ray Norton worked right in fire headquarters, so he knew that there was a lot of surveillance going on then. And so they went to Quincy, they went up to Lowell, Lawrence, and they went all the way to Fitchburg, 40 miles away, and set 4 multiple alarm fires in Fitchburg in one night, just to screw with investigators.
So it became to me then, from what you're saying, what I read in the book, Fitchburg has nothing to do with Boston firefighter and budgets, right? These places that they went, this has to be motivated by, now we're just digging all this. This is fun. Because there's nothing you're going to get out of it in Boston to bring more firemen on. I mean, Fitchburg maybe, you know, but
Yep.
it seems to me now they've kind of shown their true colors. Here's my thing. Can you define if they were pyromaniacs? What is a pyromaniac, and do any of these guys qualify for that name?
No, they don't. A pyromaniac actually is a person who has this urge that he has to set fires. And it's almost uncontrollable. Yes, what they were doing seems uncontrollable, but
Yes, it does.
they picked and chose targets. A pyromaniac has a deeper, it's an urge that can't be controlled. Now, these guys, prior to that, have no known fire history, and after that have no known fire history. After they get out of prison, stuff like that. So no, it's more they were self-righteous about setting these places. Even in Fitchburg, everybody got cutbacks So they still figure, hey, we can help these places out too. If we cause enough grief in their town, maybe they'll understand, the people will understand that we should hire these guys back and not use them as pawns in a political game type of thing. But
How did other firefighters feel? How did Boston firefighters feel about these guys? How do they feel about them?
Joe, you won't be able to help but smile.
I'm smiling. It's already come out.
It it was a strange time. Now, imagine just the city of Boston again. You lost 600 firefighters, and somebody is obviously setting these fires because of there's so many of them, and they fit a pattern and sense. And some guys would say, they must be using 55-gallon drums of gasoline to set all these fires. We should take up a collection for them. And other guys were saying, gee, I wish there were more fires when we're working. The other group keeps getting too many fires. I want more on my, because they're firefighters. They want to go out and fight fires for one. And they felt that it could help them also. I mean, as far as motives from the investigator side, we were lost. At first, you get 600 firefighters. It could be any one of them or a group of them. There's other things, board up companies, the ones who come and board up the windows and doors after a fire. What if they were doing it for profit? If we have so many of them, there's only a couple board up companies, and they rush out there to try to get the job from the insurance company, that type of thing. So we had no clue what the motivation was for a long time.